Good morning and welcome to this session we all have been waiting for. Especially me and my fellow panelists have been waiting to welcome you here on the last day of Gastein meeting. We are going to put focus on a topic that may be a little distant for some of you. We are going to talk about innovative medicines manufacturing in EU and how that is important to bring innovative medicines closer to the patients and hopefully also bring medicines to Europe in general on an innovative level. The way this is going to work here is that we will kick off with a few presentations by some of my fellow panelists. I'll introduce them one by one as we go. We will end up have a panel discussion. And then, of course, you are an important part of this panel discussion because you are the one who is going to ask all the difficult questions, all the challenging questions. I was just looking for the right word here on a morning after the party. So I'm really looking forward to that you would engage. Otherwise, there will be some few Slidos as we go along as well. So it's a pleasure. First of all, thank you for Gastein for having us. Thank you for the panelists for joining me today, for making the time available in their busy schedule to go to Gastein to prepare for this one. And without over-promising up front, I think we're going to have an exciting talk here for the next well over an hour. So without further ado, I will pass the microphone and for the first presentation to my good colleague Evdokia Korakianiti, who is head of the Department for Pharmaceutical Quality and Safety at the European Medicines Agency. Please come up here, Evdokia. I'll give you the reins here, please.
Good morning. Thank you very much, Stefan. And I was actually quite excited, and I was waiting for this panel session. And because it's a topic very dear to my heart. And I would like to start with a time travel. Yeah. See? Let's do a time travel. And you're very young, you won't remember these big phones, but I certainly do, the first mobile phones, yeah? And we're all using now, look, we are relying on our technology, and look at where technology has brought it to us. We rely to book our travel, to do our internet banking, to take us from A to B. I mean, it has really transformed our lives. And what I'm passionate about is to make sure that that technology is used also in the way we develop medicines, yeah? And manufacture them. And with there are lots of things, good things happening, we're a bit far from where we would like to be. And it's important to discuss about this. So technology can help, and digital growth can help improve the quality of medicines. And this is what we all want, what we all expect as patients, yeah? Both regulators but patients as well. It can help bring different ways of supply of medicines, for example, closer to the patient. For example, at the times of pandemic, with portable units in regions that are more in need. So, like decentralized manufacturing, it can give more options that can make our supply chains more resilient. And I hope that you have an experience going to the pharmacy and being told, no, this medicine is not available. But unfortunately, this is the reality across Europe. And we really want to bring manufacturing back in Europe, particularly for essential medicine, and actually modernize it. Use the technology that we use on our phones in that, because this can help make medicine better quality, more sustainable manufacture, green is very important for our environment, and also more reliably available. So why it's not happening, you will ask? Why are we here? Well, there are no legal barriers, we say. There are some very positive examples. There are developers, there are manufacturers that are really exploring. You'll hear a couple of tasters from our colleagues later on. We see, for example, digital, like shadowing a process and helping take the right decision so you can always have the right outcome for ATMPs or for vaccine production. But we are still not going, and I'm impatient. I'm looking at myself who said she's an impatient patient, I'm an impatient regulator. We don't see it as fast as we would have liked, and what we would have liked, and to the pace that we see with the rest of our everyday lives. So, what is happening at EU level, at policy level? There are a number of initiatives. You may have known about the new legislation, the new pharma legislation that gives a lot of opportunities and has a focus on innovation. There will be sandboxes, platform approaches, and platforms would allow extrapolating data from one product to clinical development, from one to other products, not only clinical, sorry, and different supply models of manufacturing. There is an upcoming Biotech Act, so you can see we do legislate in Europe. They will have the Biotech Act that promises to help the transition from lab, for biotech from lab to factory. We have the Critical Medicines Act that puts a lot of importance in modernizing manufacturing for critical medicines to help bring them back in Europe and make sure that there is autonomy and we're sufficient. And then, of course, there's the EU Green Deal to make sure that we manufacture in an environmentally friendly way. So there are a lot of legislative initiatives. And at EMA, we have a number of support tools to provide, I'm not going to go one by one, but to provide regulatory support, financial support to developers, give them advice, end-to-end scientific advice, technical advice, to help from technology level throughout, to help with technology implementation. But there are still lots to be done. And I'm sure you have read the Draghi report, etc. There's still lots to be done in Europe. And because bringing innovation in practice in our daily lives, it's a lot about an ecosystem. It's not only industry, it's not only academia, it is how we all work together. Regulators, industry, academia, vendors, tech companies, the funding, healthcare professionals, patients, this is all very important. So how we connect, how we do leverage each other's efforts, how do we reduce the silos, so eventually what we see in our in other aspects of daily life can really benefit also the medicine we all take as patients. Thank you.
Many thanks, Evdokia, for setting the scene for this morning's discussion. We have a question for you before we move on to the next presenter in Slido. So now you need to take out your mobile device, scan a QR code, and it's a simple question that everybody can answer, we expect. That is what you come to think of when we talk about advanced manufacturing in medicines. We're not talking about anything advanced manufacturing here within the medicine. So if you all got your QR code scanned, we can have a word cloud coming up. And while that happens, I'll invite the next presenter to come to the stage. Carmen Zanges is from the University Clinic in Würzburg in Germany. She is Italian. That doesn't speak to any bad things about her. She works a lot with AI and involved in a lot of EU framework programmed projects, among them projects bringing advanced therapies closer to the patients, what we call in Europe decentralized manufacturing. In US they will call it point of care manufacturing, you know, same. So the floor is yours. You want to be here? You want to go upstairs?
I think I'm going to be here, because then I can see the slides, because from there I might not see them. There is a screen there? I can also be here. So, good morning everyone, and thank you for the organizing for having me here today. I think that innovative manufacturing for the advanced therapies is absolutely a key topic. Because the current gaps in manufacturing processes for the advanced therapies are really hampering concretely the delivery and the access of these advanced therapies to the patients, right? And in most of the cases, these therapies are the only therapy available and that might work for those patients for which no other treatment might work. Now, this is really clear, and this is a mission that we take on at the University Clinic of Würzburg and also at the Fraunhofer Institute, for which we applied a strategic program to optimize a non-viral CAR-T manufacturing optimization. And IPAT is one of the flagship projects, and the aim of 8PAT, you see it here, 8PAT stands for Artificial Intelligence-Driven Decentralized Production for Advanced Therapies in the Hospital, is really to offer equitable, affordable, and more adaptive CAR-T manufacturing closer to the patients. The 8PAT is a project that it's an European-funded project in the framework of Horizon 2020 that comprises of 12 different partners with complementary and totally different expertise. So finding a common language was already a journey on its own, and that is basically at the end of the journey, but this will be continuing in a second project soon. So for those of you that are not really familiar with the CAR-T therapy, the CAR-T therapy is a form of personalized medicine that requires the T cells of the patients to be taken from the patients and then engineered in the lab to be able to express antigens that are really concretely targeting proteins on the cancer cells, so that basically once reinfused, they can recognize and then kill the cancer cells in the body of the patient. And what happens though, that these cells, these CAR-T cells are living drugs, right? They replicate, they persist, they interact with the microtumor environment in the body of the patient. And this is really something that we need to remember, because the starting material we are talking about is something that is highly variable, because the T cells of the patients might be different, completely different from patient to patient. And this is something that is putting a variability on the outcome of the therapy too. So now, the complexity of the manufacturing process for these CAR-T cells, it's really something that is hampering the larger uptake of these advanced therapies, right? And this is because most of the processes are still manual, multi-step. They require highly trained personnel, and so resources, right? And also, they are extremely expensive. If you think about a commercial product, because nowadays we have 6 approved products, commercial products, they go around 300K per patient. And this is, of course, something that is not really sustainable anymore for the health system, and it's also hampering access to the therapy. So the 8PAT-based the solution for these roadblocks in the larger uptake on three pillars. The first one is to move away from large clean rooms and multi-step manual processes by providing a solution that is closed, automated, and digitally integrated. Basically, what you can see here, it's a platform that is allowing all the machines that are working on providing end-to-end the CAR-T product, so from the blood of the patient until the CAR-T product, that are digitally open and capable of talking to each other, and that can work and operate in an automated and low-risk manner. And this is really important. The other solution is to make this process adaptive to the variability of the patient material. This is absolutely important, and it's, again, thanks to the digital innovation that we are capable to do so, because we implemented inline sensors and also real-time feedback loop that can inform the AI software and really operate on a real-time manner and react to the differentiation of the T cells in the bioreactor once they expand. And why this is so important for the CAR-T therapy? This is, I was mentioning that before, due to the patient variabilities. If you take 2 batches of T cells from the patients, they will never be the same. Some T cells will be very robust, and some other T cells will be really fragile, highly differentiated, exhausted, This because of the tumor burden, because of the characteristic of the patient or the disease, the pre-treatment lines that the patients have been going through before the CAR-T therapy, and this is really having a high impact on the CAR-T product itself, its persistence and its functionality in vivo. For that reason, we applied a prototype of the AI-powered digital shadow. This is the first step of a long iterative journey on the AI-driven platform that is allowing us to check on the glucose, the lactate concentrations in an indirect way, right? And also predict the cell concentration and the cell growth of the cells. This means that we are capable of adapting the perfusion, so the change of the media in the bioreactor, given the glucose consumption of the cells, and we are also actually capable of predicting when it's the optimal harvest time. The third solution, and I think it's in my opinion, a great step forward in the field, is the data integration. With the data integration, I mean a database infrastructure that is capable to link all the data from the clinical history of the patient up to the follow-up data after infusion, including the manufacturing data and the QC data. And this is absolutely important because this is the first time that we have an end-to-end database infrastructure that can follow all the data and the entire journey of the patient, acquiring and collecting data in a harmonized and standardized way. And this is because we aim at having this platform communicating with other platforms and create an ecosystem of federated learning. And this is so important, especially in the innovative fields like advanced therapies and CAR-T manufacturing. And I would like to highlight also the fact that we are not working as a siloed project, but we are really synergizing also with bigger initiatives out there in Europe that are trying to operate on standards and core data set around the CAR-T, like the T2Evolve and the Join for ATMP, which Alessandro is also the lead coordinator. And with that said, I think I was on time. Then thank you for your attention today.
Many thanks, Carmen. You can keep the microphone for later. The next speaker is Geert Thurau. Geert worked for pharmaceutical company Roche in manufacturing, technology, and innovation advocacy. But Geert is here today wearing the hat of FPIA. Please, Geert. And there should be a microphone for you as well.
Okay, wonderful. I was also looking forward to the session, and as I said, FPIA, probably some people are familiar, is the European Federation of Pharmaceutical Industry and Association. So, as Stefan said at the beginning, now for something totally different. My first question, not on Slido, just by hands. Who of you has ever been inside a pharmaceutical manufacturing plant? Ah, there's some hands up. That's good. Okay, so we got some experts here. For those who not, don't worry, because it's actually not easy to get into a pharmaceutical manufacturing plant, and that's a good thing because there were access control, there's a lot of rules and procedures. But if you ever have been in one, and those who have, expect them to be very clean, very orderly, depending on the product, even cleaner than clean, but also a bit boring, because you'll find a lot of things that even if you don't understand, they're old technology. Like Evdokia's example with the mobile phones and what they look like. So here, I'm gonna just, I was told to don't use many slides and don't be very technical. I think after the previous presenter, I'm gonna match that. And talk a little bit about pharmaceutical manufacturing. Why is it even important for us, right? Why should we care about for all types of products? And the one is, where's actually our products coming from? We're here in Gastein, which is my first visit. Very interesting meeting for sure. There's a pharmaceutical manufacturing plant less than 100 kilometers from here. There may be others closer, in the direction of the west, near Innsbruck. And it's the only remaining pharmaceutical plant in Europe that makes antibiotics. So that makes you think about, the importance of even pharmaceutical manufacturing, which usually is a boring and underrepresented topic in Europe. There's questions about resilience, question about supply chain, and maybe a question about competitiveness. And this slide, which I don't really want you to read, says that there's actually quite an importance of pharmaceutical manufacturing in Europe still, but we also want to keep it that way. And one of the ways to keep it that way is to modernize, because Europe cannot compete on things like labor cost or cost of capital or cost of a new building. We can compete, however, very nicely on technology and innovation. So that's what we are trying to talk about today. What role do various stakeholders, the ecosystem that Ilfia mentioned, have to play in that? Now, this is my technical slide. We have to go from the left to the right. The quick example I'm going to give you is basically pharmaceutical compounding, not compounding, manufacturing the last step of a sterile product. The way it's traditionally done, let's see if there's a laser here. Maybe this. No, that's not what I wanted. Okay, no laser. Upper left corner, that's what this looks like for the last, I don't know, maybe not 100 years. 2 buckets, you put various things in there, and then you mix it really nicely, and then you fill it into vials or syringes or whatever the formulation is. Now, there is opportunity to modernize, and the opportunity is, for example, done by technology. This little thing on the upper right-hand corner, hard to see, is a micromixer, single-use micromixer. And what this allows is to go from what's called a batch process, where you basically have a very fixed batch size, where you have less flexibility, to a continuous process. The continuous process is shown on the bottom here. It starts to get a little complicated, but if you just go from the left to the right, you can see things are mixed together in these micromixers in a sequential way, and then in the end you fill this into your vials in this case. What's the advantage of that? Continuous manufacturing is one of the big trends in the pharmaceutical industry, and it's enabled by technology such as the mechanical technology, the mixers, has many advantages. Again, you can be much more flexible on demand, and it also solves a couple of things. For example, the volumes that are in play here are always smaller, which can have really advantages. But that's too much detail. Again, this is even more detail, and this is really a slide I don't want you to read. I just want to flash it up to look very technical and very complicated and very informed. But the points that I wanted you to see there is, so a lot of diagrams here. The box is in gray. So we also have artificial intelligence, or maybe I should call it machine learning, in 2 places. There's a model that optimizes the process while these 3 flows come together. They're always, the mixing ratio has to be the same. It's never the same. You cannot just put it on constant. You need to be able to react to changes in small changes in the material. That's why at the very end, you have this thing called PAT, which is process analytical technology, real-time measurements, a lot of the things that Carmen mentioned as well. That's where you can measure what you're actually filling right now in a continuous process. Is very important because things may change, and then you adjust. And that adjustment is done by a process model, which is done by AI. And then up there, on the right-hand side is another AI box. That's where, again, this model also acts to do these adjustments. And again, the technology that's enabling that is partially the use of a certain type of artificial intelligence, machine learning. So there is artificial intelligence even in pharmaceutical manufacturing of a vaccine. Who would have known? That's why all these things matter to us, and later in the panel, please ask me about AI regulation in Europe. Good. Then lastly, if Dokia mentioned in her many boxes, one of them was the Quality Innovation Group, and Marcel is going to be on stage with us later. That's a team at the EMA who is basically there to be an entry portal for innovation in the quality space, which basically has to do with the product and the manufacturing process. And the company that ran this particular example had interactions. Again, some of the goals that industry is interested in is, and we'll talk about that later as well, that we kind of have harmonization still across the world, even though yesterday was the discussion on geopolitics. We still like to have some harmonization across the world. But again, the EMA interaction here started for this particular project in 2023, where there was an initial presentation at the so-called Listen, Learn, Focus Group events, which are kind of semi-public events. That's where this initially presented. The company also had a follow-up with the EMA QRG, which is more like a private event where you can share more details, maybe even things that you don't want to reveal in a public setting. So that was a good start for the company. Then, as you can see, a year later, it's not exactly a year later, but in the following year, they had a consultation with the FDA, because the FDA is also a very important stakeholder, obviously a very significant agency. They have their own quality innovation group-like thing. And then finally this year, there was actually the joint meeting with the EMA QIG and the FDA. Again, a very positive feature of EMA offering these close collaboration. By the way, I also know with other agencies, namely Swissmedic. So again, these are steps the company is taking to get increasing input, what would be expected if this could be put into manufacturing. But it also shows you it doesn't happen overnight. So we have at least a 2-year timeline in the interaction. Maybe it's a 3-year timeline, depending on how you count. But these things take some time. We won't have time today to talk about why they take time, but these are things that have to evolve. These are things, the other message from this slide, you cannot just talk to one continent alone. So in summary, I hope I gave you one little example, and I have plenty more, that innovation in manufacturing is not just in R&D, and even AI is not just in R&D, and it can be a competitive advantage in Europe. Maybe it's one of the only ways how Europe can still compete in the construction of new manufacturing facilities. This is true for all types of products. My previous speaker talked a lot about ATMPs, and there's a lot of excitement on that, but even in the conventional products, there's a lot of innovation and actually a lot of good knowledge already. So we certainly encourage EMA to continue their collaboration, have a supportive environment for manufacturing in Europe, also from the Council of Europe government perspective. And then we all want to work together in a collaborative way to simplify these pathways and basically allow for new technology also to find its place into our manufacturing facilities, no matter where they are, in fact, and no matter what product we make with it. And with that, I'm almost on time. Thank you.
Many thanks, Gerd, for bringing a little bit technical presentation, but also showing that the technique in manufacturing is moving on, have embraced AI and other technologies, but also for flagging that innovation in manufacturing is not necessarily just innovation for innovative, modern, advanced therapies, but it also happens for the traditional small molecules. And finally, for flagging that there's only one manufacturing site in Europe that produces the antibiotics we are all hoping for to prevent AMR, and we have a big gap there. But that's maybe another discussion for another day. So now, no more complicated slides. Now we're going to have an easygoing discussion. And to that, I'll invite the 3 last panelists up here. And while I do so, I will also like that we have a look at a Slido, so just to test the waters on where we are, or where you are. So the 3 panelists I'm going to invite up here is Professor Alessandro Aiuti from Milan, from San Raffaele University. You are a professor in pediatric immunohematology, but you're also the deputy director at the Fondation Téléthon, which is one of the few non-for-profit academic institutions that have a marketing authorization for an ATMP. I want to invite colleague Marcel Hofnagel from the Dutch Medicines Evaluation Board, and you are here because you are also the chair of the Quality Innovation Group that has been mentioned in a couple of slides. And you also bring the elephants on your tie into the room. So we have all the elephants on stage. And finally, but not least, Mathia Belmont, you are a patient representative. You are a mom to 2 children with SMA, spinal muscular atrophy. You are active in the Spanish SMA organization. You've been active in the European umbrella one, and you have a legacy of being a patient representative on the Committee for Advanced Therapies at the European Medicines Agency. Thank you to all of you being here. Let's have a look at the Slido. That was the first one about money, investment, pricing and reimbursement, and so forth. Let's see what comes out here in 1 or maybe 2 words. What do you think the major challenges in advanced innovative manufacturing is? A little bit linked to the first question, but hopefully you got some further bright ideas that we can... Money again. Money talks always, huh? Money, money, money. Nothing more than money? Can money solve it all? Well, that may be a question for the panel later. Apparently, okay. So, money is growing, huh? Okay, good. So, with our new addition to the panel, and I'll give first you, Alessandro, to give a few reflection on what you heard, and also reflecting from your perspective as an academic researcher and one working close to patients and developing bedside treatments as well.
Yes, thank you. I think academia is a key player in developing medicines, innovative and ATMPs, and it has been shown as it has brought starting from the academic centers, many of the medicines that have arrived to the final stage and to the market have been originally developed there. But clearly there are challenges in bringing them to the clinics and up to the market for a number of reasons, and manufacturing is a key issue. And I think what we as academia can do is certainly start from the beginning of thinking of processes, manufacturing, which are designed also for large-scale production, as we've heard before, optimizing them, reducing the cost so that they can be accessible. And I think there are a number of issues that really need to be solved before this medicine can be really accessible to patients with rare diseases, patients with cancer, or patients with chronic diseases. So I think collaboration between academia and regulatory agencies and industry is really important.
Thank you, Alessandro. And then passing on to Marcel from the Quality Innovation Group, and maybe not only EMA, you also represent the national regulatory authority. What is your take on these challenges here?
Well, I think we see innovation coming. We see innovation coming in clinical studies, and AI is applied there. We see innovation coming also in pharmacovigilance. But the true innovation for a patient actually starts technically there where the product is manufactured. If we've got new technical capabilities, that's where the new product comes to the patients, new treatment options. I mean, if we take, for instance, genome editing, we've seen the beautiful example in the US, baby KJ. I think that's a great example, but that's at the level of the technical part. So that's where you need manufacturing and innovation in manufacturing. And we as regulators have got the role to make sure that these new products are safe, but we also have to do everything if there is a novel product that it can come to the patient. And so we at EMA want to make sure that if there is a product that can bring significant benefit to a patient, that we are able to accommodate it, and we go to any length to accommodate it, making sure that it does get to the patient. And I think also we've seen during the COVID pandemic that you need a dedicated team to allow innovations to come to the patient soon. And the COVID pandemic showed that we were able to bring, in that case, a vaccine to the people of Europe in a fast pace. And I think that's what we as Quality Innovation Group, being dedicated and having a broad network, try to accommodate.
Thank you, Marcel. Very important points. And last but not least, again, Mathia, from a patient perspective, is this too far from the patients, or is it just, how important is it for patients? You've been part of, you and I were talking before, you've been part of the CAT and been listening and taking part in these discussions, which is to some extent far from the patient. I don't think patients always, maybe I misunderstand, not always think about there's a manufacturing and how important that is. But your reflections, please.
Thank you. It seemed so far that the first time I participated at a CAT meeting, I did not understand the agenda. So I really didn't know very well what I was doing there. However, innovation has saved my children's life. They both, as you have explained, live with a rare genetic disease. And when they got diagnosed, there was nothing. We were told, we were used the words science fiction. It is science fiction to think that there will be something for your children. And people used to comfort us by saying, don't worry, research advances a lot. But it sounded just like words. But innovation then came. And they found a way out to be able to get treatments to my children. So innovation has indeed saved a whole community. Having said this, it is an area where patients are not normally involved, and we should be, because we can save a lot of effort and a lot of funding if you consult to the patient. I'll give you again a practical example with my community's disease, which is spinal muscular atrophy. The first treatment that was developed for them had to be administered through a lumbar puncture, which is okay, that's been happening for many years. But in this specific disease, most of the population developed very severe scoliosis and had to have a spinal fusion, and therefore it was extremely challenging to be able to perform a lumbar puncture in them. What does this mean? By not having addressed this through innovation since the beginning, a substantial part of the community could not reach this treatment that was saving the lives of those who were getting into it. Years go by, innovation comes again, and a device has been developed. And now the device can be inserted into the patient's body, and the lumbar puncture can be addressed. So I think that those are examples where it is very clear that the impact that it has into patients.
Thanks for bringing these very personal experience to the table here. Manfred, that's very, very powerful. Maybe going back to you, Marcel, from your work in the Quality Innovation Group, can you give some other examples where quality innovation have had an impact for patients?
If we look at, let's say, all the ATMPs that have come to us, the first cell therapies, and Alessandro knows about that, then we see, let's say, regulators having to understand these cells, these cell therapies. We've seen the CAR-Ts coming to us, we've seen the CD34 cells where genetic diseases are there that can be treated by a cell therapy, and then we need to understand the risks, and also, and then specifically for manufacturing, to make sure that the product that has been used in a clinical trial is also the product that comes to the patient once it's commercialized, when it's rolled out to all patients. And that's where we need to understand more, and that's where we need to also be in contact with the developers, because the developers have got the knowledge and they are the ones that have to inform us. And if we come to the examples that Gert is bringing to us, that's more about, let's say, a faster and more agile production systems, or smaller batches, or maybe even personalized medicines. There, again, we need to understand, okay, but now the process has changed, but do we sufficiently understand that if this comes to the patient, that this is indeed the product it needs to be? If it's very personalized, maybe a single, let's say, genetic condition, can we now rely on all the data that are already there to bring it to the patient? And that's where we have come away from the traditional way of where things are produced always the standard way, as Gert was showing on the top left side of his slide, just 2 stirrers and having the things chewing out batches of 100,000 files each time. Now a single file, and we still want to be confident that the patient gets what it needs. And that's our role, but we need to be able to get it out to the patient.
Thank you, Gert. Evdokia, you have an additional point?
Another quick example where colleagues from the Quality Innovation Group early last year visited a site in France, a manufacturing site in France, that was manufacturing vaccines and other biologicals. what was new, innovative there, it was the way the facility was designed. And it was designed in a way that if there was a need for rapid increase in production, they could just, it was flexible, the design, so they could just tear walls apart or move things around, and then they would put one line after the other and increase 20 or 100-fold, I don't recall now, production in record time. And I want to bring you back to the time of the pandemic. When we started with COVID vaccines, in January we had 100,000 doses available. And it took 6 months, which was still record time for what is normal, to bring up to 800,000. So having facility designs that allow that and are pre-designed to rapidly increase capacity, it's very, very helpful for preparedness.
So these are pretty good examples, all of them. And now we ask the audience, what do you believe the challenges are? But what are the challenges? And maybe, Gerd, you have something to add here, and then you can continue speaking about where you see the challenges. Why isn't this happening more? Or is it happening?
Yeah, thank you, Steffen. And I look at the Slido, and first came the money, and that always helps. But I think now we have, at least on the top of the chart, not in numbers, is the regulatory environment and regulatory barriers. So let's talk about that. And that's an observation. So I've happened to be in this space for quite some time, and no matter in what space, the pharmaceutical industry is a regulated industry, and there's a good reason for that, and we welcome that, we accept that. But there's many teams that start on the technical scientific end. I'm sure the same is true in the clinical environment, but also in the quality environment. Like there's many associations and technical teams who come up with new technology ideas and they develop, and it always is the same thing. At some point they realize, oh, wait a minute, there's also regulations that we have to follow, right? And then usually they form like a regulatory sub-team, and so this mechanism I've seen play over and over again. Now there's a chance for early engagement, which we can talk about. But what it really is the regulations are not exactly the most flexible thing. And you have to understand there's some regulations that apply, and they may have been built on the knowledge of older types of technologies. Just like your cell phone can do a lot more things than call somebody on the phone. In fact, it's barely used for that. The regulation may be based on some older type of technology, and so they have to be either adapted, which is difficult, or maybe we're looking for new interpretations. And that's usually the regulatory environment that makes it difficult. And the dialogue is important here, but it's very often that people who start on the technical, scientific end of innovation eventually run into, wait a minute, there's also the GMP rules or other rules, which may at the time not have been written to include these kind of things, which even different principles, which may be just exactly safe, but they don't fit the letter and the word of the regulations. So that's when the dialogue starts, and that's when the discussion starts. Maybe it's a matter of interpretation. That's what I think the regulatory barrier for innovation, actually, that's how it starts, and we can talk about how we can solve it.
Yeah, and maybe moving a little bit on and asking both Alessandro and Carmen to reflect on the regulatory barriers and whether there is a bigger role for regulators also to support what is happening in academic development. So, Alessandro?
I think there are many, as you heard, there are many bottlenecks and hurdles. They say on the side of the academia, on the academic developers, certainly early engagement is important. Understanding the regulatory framework, navigating which sometimes is difficult for who comes from academia, because sometimes they're two completely different languages, so we need to align on the same language. But also, let's say, co-developing the regulatory framework between academia developers and regulators is very important, because this happened at the very beginning when there were the first medicines which went into clinical trial, gene therapy, and then the market, that there were not much knowledge. So we started the TIGE discussion with the regulators, the Italian ones, the European ones, which allow to time by time and develop what was the framework. Now, as was said before, the framework could be different for new medicines. That's why we need to timely engage and discuss it. I think that the two clearly the two, some of them, there are several important points, but 2 points which we are really working now are, on one side, avoid repetition of experiments in a way that we can reuse data, existing data on manufacturing, on quality, also non-clinical and clinical, what we call, let's say, a platform approach, so that there is cross-leverage and cross-use of data. This would allow, starting from, let's say, a full data set from one product to reuse that data on the next product, which is based on the same technology, and this would avoid a lot of cost and would be also time sparing, and this will allow, especially for some rare diseases, also for cancer, where you have basically same technology, but you're just changing the little piece of gene, but the rest remains the same. And that's something which we started already some discussion with Italian, with the EMA Innovation Task Force Group, and we'll bring the case in the next months. And the second point, I think, is a concept that was already discussed, but I want to elaborate more, is about the fixed rules of manufacturing, which in which is difficult to introduce innovation, optimizations, and improvement, because the manufacturing process that has been used for the clinical development and market is there, and doing changes, it's costly, it takes time, while these changes could be actually improvement for the patient safety, improvement for the manufacturing, reducing the cost. So these are things, two areas where we really need to further discuss with the regulatory authorities and find solutions within a regulatory framework that is acceptable and would allow to streamline this, the development of ATMPs.
Thank you, Alessandro. Carmen, your reflections?
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, from a purely academic point of view, I totally agree with Alessandro saying that in the academic environment, we lack really the language of the regulatory environment, and this poses really big barriers. Now, what I have learned along my journey in the European funded project, it's really that you need to have a vision. You need to have a vision for your product. You need to be innovator, but the true innovator nowadays is the one not only that has the brilliant idea and then can prototype that, but that it's taking that idea and it's making sure that the field and the community can implement that idea in the faster manner. And what does that mean? You need to take that idea and to apply a depth of innovation. You need to make this idea a three-dimensional idea, meaning that you need to consider ethical considerations. You need to consider patients. You need to consider regulatory framework. You need to consider all the key stakeholders that can participate and take this idea to the real implementation in the faster manner. But this requires innovation. This requires, vision for your product and your innovation. And that's the key. Now, in the T2Evolve Consortium, for example, we have a brilliant example of such a visionary innovator. And this is Julio Delgado from the Hospital Clinic Barcelona. He is the first academic developer that took his product up to the part of the market authorization, has right now the prime designation for the first academic developed CAR-T product. And it's really impressive, the work that he did, together with the team, of course, right, for that particular product. And once he said, Carmen, what we require really as academic, in the academic field, is to have a vision and to understand that we can really bring forward our products. But this needs to really speak to all, to the entire community, because innovation is a community responsibility. We go nowhere alone, we go nowhere in silos, but we really need to create community of practice. So, and that's what we are really trying to do with a larger consortia like T2Evolve, Join for ATMP, 8PAT. We have a bunch of stakeholders, also with different expertise, but actually in the same room, at the same table, we have all the key stakeholders. and this makes implementation of innovation faster. There is no other term for that, right? So that's my my comment on that.
So if Dukia and Marcel also listening to the challenges brought forward here by both Geert and the academic colleagues on the panel, what can we do? What do we do? And can we do it better? I know that was a Kinder egg.
I think what can we do? We need to. I want to echo what you said, Carmen, and also what it's an ecosystem. So we need to lean out and lean in and listen better to our actors and stop being waiting to be understood, but actively thinking and reaching out. So developing that common language. So in my view, strengthening, so having Carmen mention a vision, thinking that anything can be a product for patients, and then thinking what are the stakeholders that will make it a product from the start, it's key. And we all have a role to play to make this possible. So, and key is early engagement. Not when you have an idea formulated, then it's too late, it's locked, innovation is locked, early stage, at technology level. So what I say as an opportunity, there is, first time in the years that I am in the regulatory world, manufacturing has been the forefront of strategy, yeah? You've seen all these legal acts, you hear the commissioner talking, strategic autonomy. So there is a political will. The political will is there. There is know-how. So connecting the dots is important, and early engagement. We have some fora, we mentioned Marcel. I'll give the floor now to Marcel to speak more, but it's early engagement and not shying away, not hesitating, but really, and actually persevering, because when you develop a new language, and this is what I experience all the time, there are a lot of misunderstandings. So keeping that curiosity to try to understand what the others are doing and why, rather than rejecting, that's very important.
You want to add anything, Marcel?
Yeah, what I can add here, first, we as regulators have, I think, come away from being tick box regulators. We are talking about risk-based assessment, and what to me is nothing else than common sense. And if we come to academic developers, they got their vision and what the product is they want to develop. And I think we can facilitate, because they are in the end responsible for their own product, and we can facilitate all the aspects that they have to think about also for safety, ensuring efficacy. And we've got some examples where you see that they intend to make a change to their product, the production system, and it seems it will not impact the product. We allow them to do so because we see the arguments, and after one batch they actually find out that it does affect the product, and they go back to their initial process. And that tells us that we've been vigilant enough to immediately identify that, but still allow this change to be made. So I think but we need to be in interaction. We cannot do it alone like the academics cannot do it alone. If we're talking about, let's say, the big pharma that are, of course, regulatory much stronger, but they operate specifically very global. So we also need to be internationally connected. So we reach out to our FDA colleagues, we talk to them every 2 months, we reach out to our Japanese colleagues, other colleagues, to make sure, but we also have to make sure that the burden on them is not too high to allow getting, let's say, the innovations into the manufacturing system and not having too much paperwork afterwards.
Geert, you have a reaction?
Yeah, so I very much like what you said, Marcel, there also about the international. I was just going to make a collaboration. The language thing, right? It is true, and I think the effect, what I've seen over and over again, is you have very experienced people in the technical scientific field who don't just speak the language, but don't have an understanding of regulation. And then you have very experienced people in the regulatory and quality world, and they don't know about the innovation, right? So it's really to bring these together, and part of my job is basically being a translator, basically putting innovation into the regulatory context. So the language thing is sometimes, I think it's more than just a language thing, a different terminology. I think there's a lack of knowledge, so that we have to be honest about that. Second thing I wanted to say is Marcel already said it, international collaboration is so important because these things ultimately cannot be deployed in Europe alone. But again, Europe also has to stay, and I'm going to use the word that hasn't been used much in conference, has to stay competitive here, right? I mean, there's a world out there where there's a lot of openness, and I think Europe with the QRG is doing a good job really enabling that industry and academia and regulatory dialogue. And then you have to also recognize that something that the QRG is not in charge of are still in place. Like, for example, in the pharma legislation, the level of detail that you have to have in the dossier, which prevents what Professor Ayuti said to actually change something, because it's a big filing. You write this filing, and this is not a matter of writing a paper, or maybe it is the same, but it takes weeks to write this, months to submit this. These are actual hurdles to doing something different. So there are things then, and we're not going to talk about some of the AI acts here and the annexes. These are things then we have to identify in the existing regulation which actually form an indirect barrier to introduce innovation. And that's where industry and academia has a role in, for example, the commenting process. So there are these fundamental things that even the best conversation with the QRG cannot solve, and we have to work at them at the same time.
Thank you. I'm looking at Bastian and Sabine to check if we have some online questions to our distinguished panel.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much, Stefan, and everyone for the lively discussion on the panel. Yeah, my name is Bastian. I'm part of the Young Gaststeiners, and together with Sabine from the EMA, we've been monitoring the online platform. There has indeed been a lively debate, especially for a Friday morning. And we try to summarize it into like 3 clusters for you. The first one is mostly about international collaboration, and we've touched a little bit on that. And it's mostly about how the EU and the EMA can foster deeper international collaboration to accelerate the access to personalized medicinal and novel therapies. The second one is about expertise and inspections, and you also touched on that already. What is being done to ensure that expertise is present and experts are present for assessing those rapidly evolving manufacturing practices from a regulatory perspective? And lastly, like a broader topic on competitiveness and geopolitics. So we try to put it a little bit together. How to enhance European competitiveness in innovative manufacturing, which is also one of the declared goals of the European Commission. And we heard Commissioner Vaheli talk about that just yesterday. And then more broadly, the challenge also with the United States and the geopolitical considerations there, building more manufacturing in Europe, but also the challenge for pharmaceutical companies on going to the US or going to Europe. And maybe just a slight curveball towards the end. Another question there was, something we haven't really addressed to that extent, is a bit off topic, but I'm adding it anyway, is about the competition for clinical trials also in the geopolitical climate. So thank you very much, Stefan.
Thank you, Bastian. That was a pretty lump of, who want to kick off on that pile of questions? There were a lot pointing. Gerd, you want to?
Oh, I can. I'm always happy to talk about geopolitics, and I was also here. Maybe I cannot speak about the competitive and clinical trials, but yeah, the environment out there has definitely changed. And then I think, again, Europe, politicians and EMA are doing a great job, but the competition is fierce, and you have to also think about unintended consequences maybe of things that are developed in one sector and then have their reflection on it. Again, in this session yesterday, I think the word was from one of the professors on this topic. The US is fast or has speed. I think China knows how to scale. The Emirates are agile, and Europe was ... And I think the typical assumption is Europe is about rules. And so I think that's something we have to be aware. We're going to have, for example, a very safe deployment of AI, but it's maybe so safe that it may not be deployed in European factories. So that's where the competitiveness does play a role.
Yeah. I can touch on a couple of points. I think strengthening the infrastructure for manufacturing is important also at academic level. GMP academic cell factories have been important in Europe to bring innovation quickly to patients, especially for phase 1-2 studies. Of course, they are not yet they're not able to go to a level which is the market production. But I think there are 2 points where let's say the academic public GMP production is important. I think one is the decentralized manufacturing, which we have touched before, in which, especially for diseases which will become more frequent, that can be addressed by CAR-T. For example, if there will be breakthrough CAR-T for solid tumor, there will be much more patients than there are now, and we'll need more point-of-care manufacturing. And the other one is probably the personalized medicine, where you need patient-specific treatment, which you need the competence of the scientists and the physicians, and a way of rapidly going to the patient, maybe with a platform of gene editing. So that's where also this could be important, having a local manufacturing production. And the other point about competitiveness, clearly it's more related to the clinical trial, but we know that there are some not harmonization in the timing of approval clinical trials within European countries. There need to be more harmonization. There will be also need, I would say, strengthen investment in the agency, in the national agency, which suffer some understaffing, unfortunately. That would allow, it's an investment for the future of the health, for the future of the patients, because we need competitiveness in order to have patient access to this innovative medicine.
Maybe, yeah, Evdokia, please, but could you also reflect a little bit on the topic of expertise? How do we as regulators make sure that we have the right expertise so we can make sure that the products we are considering the world to control is actually safe and efficacious and manufactured in optimal ways and so forth? Thank you,
Stephen. I'll reflect on that and a bit on international collaboration. So expertise, that's why we have put in place the Quality Innovation Group, where we bring experts across. Our strength is our network, and we have a vast network of thousands of assessors and inspectors from all member states. Within that network, of course, we have valuable expertise, and we put them in together. We have developed the Quality Innovation Group, who are the forefront of interacting with innovative developers. We get an understanding. We can get additional specialized expertise. We have cost. We fund research at the moment. This is one. But also we can have additional expertise from academia to answer specific technical questions. And that core doesn't maintain the knowledge within these 8-10 enlightened people, but also we actively then share the knowledge across the network. And when it comes to the product level, these colleagues, the Quality Innovation Group, will be stewarding, hand-holding the developer throughout the development and contributing the assessment and inspection by providing expert support, so eventually there's an end-to-end care, like hypercare at this stage where we are. When it comes to, and we make sure also that we are well connected with our international partners, because yes, there's competitiveness, but at the same time, development and manufacturing has a global nature. So Marcel mentioned about how often we speak with our FDA colleagues, and we exchange notes and pipelines and technical discussions every 2 months. We speak with other colleagues. We have the opportunity, if a developer wants, they can always ask, and we can include other international partners in our discussions on their product. So like that, we can ensure that there is convergence. So say that they, in the marketing strategy, they are considering these X regions, they can always ask to invite them, and we do that. And some developers are taking this on board. We offer mock site visits, so we can go upfront and see how the technology is implemented in a GMP environment. This helps also, together with the local supervisory authority, this helps with the tech transfer and make sure that also they are well prepared, because they are the ones that will be looking after the GXP compliance of the site. So there is a lot going on and in that speed. And I give maybe the floor to Marcel, and then I want to speak.
Marcel?
Yeah, well, Evdokia covered most of it, but I think we are only 8 experts in the quality innovation group. So these are GMP inspectors, these are chemical assessors and biotech assessors. So we cannot cover everything that's there. So we need the academics that we got connections with or that express their interest and show. So, and they have to give us the technical information that we go by, and then in combination with the information that the manufacturers provide us, we can assess the efficacy and safety aspects of a product. And I still want my elephant.
Yeah, please bring out the elephant.
I think that maybe at some point, if we're talking about manufacturing, cost is also an aspect and may at some point be a part of the benefit risk, because money we spend on let's say, on products that we cannot spend somewhere else in the health care is actually affecting maybe other patients. So cost may be part of benefit risk, and if we produce something for a single patient, we may not need all the tests we would need if the product goes to 100,000 patients.
That's a really good point, yeah. Definitely. Carmen, reflection from your side, and then I would like us to round up.
So a quick one just to highlight again the powerful tool that the European projects and large European consortia can really be to support European competitiveness in the space of innovation for advanced therapies, but innovation in general, right? So, and I really think that this kind of assets are unique. They are not present worldwide, so we should take advantage in Europe of such a set of multi-stakeholder consortia in projects, and also about the fact that with this kind of projects, we are kind of forced in a way to really implement also early dialogue with the regulators that should really be a proactive and really continuous dialogue, because this is making the field moving forward, right? So I really would like to stress out the fact that this is a unique thing that we have, and we should really think how to better take advantage of this as unique asset.
So before closing, I would like to have each of you to, there was one thing left on that slide, and that was the political will. And there is a political will at the moment to move innovation forward in Europe, to make Europe more competitive, to leverage the geopolitical situation and so forth. Now we're only focusing on manufacturing. Are we on the right track in Europe? Is it yes, we can, or are there still doubts? So a few very short impulse statements going down the line here. I think I start at the other end for once, because then you, if Dokia can get the last word. I know you like that. Menthia.
Thank you. As for how patients are protected or brought closer to innovation, I think that it also links with the right to try and how that's handled in Europe. And I think that to that regard, we normally discuss how much the patient is willing, how much risk is willing to take, whereas I think that's a wrong point of view. I think is how far can the innovation get? Because the burden should not be given to the patient. And therefore policies should protect that. If there is no way around it, then put the burden to the patient. If there is a way around it through innovation, then let innovation lower the risk.
Thank you. Marcel?
I think we see, let's say, with the draft new legislation, there will be more room for innovation. So I can see a real let's say, support for innovation in the new draft of legislation, and let's hope that it really turns out that way, and that really we can work in a risk-based, common sense way as regulators.
Yeah, I think that's the space where we can bring this innovation to patients. It is really important that we work together in the next years, all different stakeholders, to make this new legislation actually implemented in a way that is facilitating the development and access of this therapy. So we really need to work together with a common goal.
Yeah, I would say let's keep looking. Let's keep observing. I think there is a will there. I also want to say this, right? I sometimes feel I'm an ATMP panel. There's innovation manufacturing, and I want to see it across all products, right? So like there's 1 million tablets made every day, and so like let's not forget that we have the breadth there, and we can talk later about Marcel, whether if it's only for one patient, you have different tests than for 1,000. But again, let's keep looking. I think sometimes I feel there's maybe a little bubble in Europe. Let's keep observing the outside and see what happens, and look for the unintended. I think the will is there, the ability is also there, but the world out there, not just across the Atlantic Ocean, but also across the Pacific Ocean, is moving very, very fast.
So for me, actually, the last statement is really that, yes, we can implement innovation, we can move on Europe, but we need to do that together. So all stakeholders should really sit at the table, and in this way, this is the only way to identify the gaps, really, and also identify faster solutions together. So that's my statement.
Final words, if Tukia. Or I have the final word, but then.
We can do, yes, definitely we can, and there is huge openness as for what we see, a political will. I would advocate that as Europe, we need to still connect internationally and globally. I would not be advocating for working alone. We can play a leading role, and there's a global nature, and we have very good examples where we can contribute and make a difference to patients globally. I think we need to think simpler. I would advocate for simplicity and be able to step back and consider what is a real risk to patients.
Thank you, Tukia. So I'll thank all of you for taking your time to contributing here. I think we had a very nice discussion. I hope you enjoyed it as well. I hope you enjoyed the Gastein Forum this year. And I thank you all and wish you a safe travel back home.